briefly give you a format for today's debate so you'll know what to expect. Firstly, both speakers will give an opening statement. 30 seconds will be given to Speaker 1, Ms. Lea May Moalong, for her introduction. For the intro of Speaker 2, Ms. Portia May Cortez Manulat will also be given 30 seconds. After, the first speaker to open the debate is Ms. Lea May Moalong. In affirmative statement will be given 5 to 10 minutes. After, her thoughts will also be given the same 5 to 10 minutes to the opposing concept Speaker 2, Ms. Portia May Cortez Manulat. Then Speaker 1 and 2 will be given 3 to 5 minutes for rebuttal, and finally 2 minutes for their conclusions will be given to Speaker 1 as well as to Speaker 2. Now we come into our debate today. To open the case from the affirmative side, here is the first speaker of the affirmative, Ms. Lea Moalong. The first speaker of affirmative given 30 seconds only.
When we say animals, animals are major parts of the environment. To protect the rights of animals is must to every human. Animal rights are also known as animal liberation, meaning that the most basic interest of non-human animals should be treated the same way as the similar interests of human beings.
Then, to start the case from the negative team, here is the first speaker of the negative, Ms. Portia May Manula.
Animals don't need rights to be protected. In fact, the argument that animals should be treated properly can be based entirely on the need for human beings to behave morally rather than on the rights of animals. Animals should not be mistreated in any way, but they should not have animal-like rights either, same as humans. Animals don't understand fully what's right and wrong, and they only use instincts. Of course, animals have done good deeds, but they have also attacked humans. If they had rights the same as humans, then it'd be extremely dangerous for humans to roam around without being attacked. I love animals, but they should not be treated as humans because they aren't, since they're not human. Also, they should also be protected and treated kindly because we should appreciate the fact that we have them. It does not mean that we should treat them any old way, but it does mean that the proper treatment of animals is not predicated or based upon their rights.
To continue our debate today, I would like to call the Speaker 1 of the affirmative's argument, Ms. Lea May Moalong.
According to the 11th edition of Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary 2003, a right is a power or privilege to which one is justly entitled. In the Animal Right Crusade, The Growth of a Moral Protest 1992, the zoologists James M. Jasper and Dorothy Nelkin define a right as a moral trump card that cannot be disputed. The phrase human rights came into usage during the late 1700s to refer to generally recognized privilege or freedoms that every person should enjoy. Since the 1970s, the debate has risen about whether animals have moral rights that should be recognized and protected by human society. This is a largely a philosophical question, but the answer has many practical consequences. For example, if animals have a right to life, then it is wrong to kill them. If animals have a right to liberty, then it is wrong to hold them in captivity. If animals have a right to pursue happiness and enjoy security, then it is wrong to interfere in their natural lives. Societies and governments make decisions about who should be granted rights and how those rights should be secured. In general, an individual's legal right to life and liberty ends if that person infringes on someone else's right to life and liberty. In some states, a person who kills another person can be executed by the government. The support of animals believe that animals have an inherent worth of value completely separate from their usefulness to humans. We believe that every creature with a will to live has a right to live. Reagan conscience belief was animals have the same right as humans. They too feel pain and suffering. Animal right is not just a philosophy. It is a social movement that challenges society's traditional view that all non-human animals exist solely for human use. As PETA founder Ingrid Newkirk has said that when it comes to pain, love, joy, loneliness, and fear, a rat is a pig, is a dog, is a boy. Advocacy groups and humanitarians alike have long argued for the rights of animals around the world, fighting for the right as sentient creatures to a life free of torture and suffering. Some advocate for not using animals as food, clothing, or other goods, and others, such as vegans, even go as far as to denounce the use of animal byproducts. To animal rights activists, the main problem with this view is that humans do not have the right to use and exploit animals, no matter how well the animals are treated. Buying, selling, breeding, confining, and killing animals infringe on the animal rights, no matter how humanely they are treated. Since Peter Singer published Animal Liberation in 1975, animal rights activists have proposed the idea that animals should be granted the same right as human beings. Various movements have emerged, and throughout the past decade, endeavors have turned out to be increasingly successful. Referring to scientific studies with animals exhibiting attributes similar to human beings, activists argue that animals are akin to human beings and should thus be protected with the same body of rights. The line of reasoning in favor of granting animals equal rights to human beings emphasize the fact that scientists have found traits in animals we normally associate with human beings. The fact that some animals exhibit traits similar to human beings certainly provides a strong argument for granting at least some animals' rights. But despite convincing scientific evidence, this argument does not provide any philosophical justification of animal rights. An adequate argument for animal rights would require further philosophical inquiry and not only descriptive conclusions. Of course, we can feel reverence and pity for animals being treated badly, but this not lead to the conclusion that animals should enjoy the same legal status as person. Though as I strongly oppose the idea of granting animals the same right as human beings, this does not conflict with the proposition that animals should be treated properly.
To continue our debate today, I would like to call the second speaker of the negatives argument, Ms. Porchame Manula.
According to Sydney's 2017 group's website, it works to change legal status of at least some non-human animals from mere things, which lack the capacity to possess any legal rights, to persons who possess such fundamental rights as bodily integrity and bodily liberty, and those other legal rights to which evolving standards of morality, scientific discovery, and human experience entitle them. Animals cannot shoulder an obligation, thus they cannot participate in the complex social contract that structures rights. Some people believe that animals don't have rights, or that even they do, those rights should count for less than human wishes, but that doesn't give human beings moral, okay, to treat animals badly. Even if animals don't have rights, human beings may still have a moral duty not to mistreat them. And human beings have an awareness of moral ideas and understanding that differences between right and wrong. Human beings accept that certain things are morally wrong and should not be done, regardless of whether the victim has any rights or not. Causing pain and suffering is morally wrong, whether the victim is a human animal or non-human animal. This is not because it violates the rights of the victim, but because causing pain and suffering is inherently wrong, and causing pain and suffering therefore diminish the moral standing of the human being that causes it. Therefore, human beings should not be cruel to animals, but this argument can push us too far. The absence of cruelty does not make an act moral good, and even if it does remove one ingredient that would make the act morally wrong. And acts that are not cruel, even acts that are kind, can be morally wrong. I guess that all depends upon your definition of this kind of situation, like autonomous. In my world of view, an autonomous being is either a human being or an entity, like other country, comprised of human beings. I do not believe that any animal should have the same rights as human beings. Most humans have the capability to contemplate their actions and character. Animals do not. Opponents of the concept of animal rights argue that since animals have neither a sense of morality nor an understanding of their duties towards others, they can't have rights. Others, in turn, dismiss such views as speciesist. Human beings use animals for a wide variety of purposes, including research. The approximately 260 million people in the United States keep about 110 million dogs and cats as pets. More than 5 billion animals are killed in the United States each year as a source of food. Animals are used for transportation, for sport, for recreation, and for companionship. 7 animals are also used to learn more about living things and about the illnesses that afflict human beings and other animals. By studying animals, it is possible to obtain information that cannot be learned in any other way. When a new drug or surgical technique is developed, society deems it unethical to use that drug or technique first in human beings because of the possibility that it would cause harm rather than good. Instead, the drug or technique is tested in animals to make sure that it is safe and effective. Animals also offer experimental models that would be impossible to replicate using human subjects. Animals can be fed identically and close monitor diets. As with inbred mice, members of some animal species are genetically and identically enabling species or researchers to compare different procedures or identical animals. Some animals have biological similarities to humans that make them particularly good models of specific disease, such as rabbits for arthritis or monkeys for polio. The polio vaccine was developed and its safety is still tested in monkeys. Animals are also indispensable to rapidly growing field of biotechnology, where they are used to develop, test, and make new products such as monoclonal antibodies. And researchers draw upon the full range of living things to study life, from bacteria to human beings. And 8 many basic biological processes are best studied in single cells, tissues, cultures, and plants because they are easiest to grow or examine. But researchers also investigate a wide range of animal species from insects, nematodes, dogs, cats, and monkeys. In particular, mammals are essential to search or researchers because they are the closest to us in evolutionary terms. For example, many diseases that affect human beings also affect other mammals, but they do not occur in insects, plants, or bacteria. Far fewer animals are used in research than are used for other purposes. An estimated 7 to 22 million vertebrate animals are used each year in research, education, and testing. Less than 1% of the number killed for food. About 85% of these animals are rats and mice that have been bred for research.
Ladies and gentlemen, and our honorable teacher, this is the Speaker 1 Rebuttal, Miss Leia May Moalom.
I strongly agree that animals should be given a legal right as a human. According to the laws of most nations, animals are covered under property rights. That means the value of their life is dependent upon market forces and demand. If something happened to a pet, unless there is cruelty in the actions taken, the responsibility involves replacing the property of the pet instead of addressing of a fundamental right of life. The primary benefit of giving animals rights is to protect the general welfare of society. Not only are animals living creatures, but people who take their fury out on an animal are just a few steps away from doing so to humans. Animal rights activism is based on the idea that animals are sentient and that speciesism is wrong, the former of which is scientifically backed. An international panel of neuroscientists declared in 2012 that non-human animals have consciousness, and the latter is still hotly contested among humanitarians. The idea that animals could be considered legal persons with rights is relatively new, but in centuries past, animals were frequently involved in court cases in which they were put on a trial. Most were found guilty of offenses such as murder and assault. Punishment included the hanging of animals found guilty. The reason that people have right is to prevent unjust suffering. Similarly, the reason that animal rights activists want animals to have right is to prevent them from suffering unjustly, and most people recognize that other humans have certain fundamental rights. According to the United Nations Universal Declaration of human rights include the right of life, liberty, and security of a person, an adequate standard of living, to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution, to own property, freedom of opinion and expression, to education of thought, conscience and religion, and the right to freedom from torture and degrading treatment, among others. These rights are different from animals' rights because we have the power to ensure that other humans have access to food and housing, are free from torture, and can express themselves. On the other hand, it is not in our power to ensure that every bird has a nest or that every squirrel has an acorn. Part of an animal rights is leaving the animals alone to live their lives without encroaching on their world or their lives.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, and our beloved teacher, Sir Ronnie, this is the speaker to rebuttal, Miss Portia May Manula.
Carl Cohen's reject arguments by those who favor severely curbing or eliminating animal experimentation, then defends the position that we have a strong duty to conduct the experiments to alleviate human suffering and extend human lives. Cohen argues that animals have no rights. A right properly understood is a claim or potential claim that one party may exercise against another. The differing targets, contents, and sources of rights and their inevitable conflict together weave a tangled web. Notwithstanding all such complications, rights are in every case. Claims or potential claims within a community of moral agents. Rights arise and can be defended only among beings who actually do or can make moral claims against one another. Therefore, rights are necessarily only for human, and their possessors are persons and human beings. Most influential has been Immanuel Kant's emphasis on the universal human possession of a uniquely moral will and the autonomy its use entails. Human confront choices that are purely moral, and humans, or not dogs or cats, lay down moral laws for others and for themselves. Human beings are self-legislative, morally autonomous, and animals cannot possess rights. Animals cannot possess rights because conducting research on animal subjects, therefore, we do not violate their rights because they have none to violate. And we must not infer or therefore that a live being has simply in being alive a right to its life. The assertion that all animals only because they are alive and have interest also possess the right to life is an abuse of that phrase and wholly without warrant. However, we are not morally free to do anything we please to animals. We do have obligations that do not arise from claims against us based on the rights. Rights entail obligations, but many of the obligations we ought to have do not involve the other's entitlement. Teachers have obligations to their students, shepherds to their sheep, and cowboys to their horses. Your dog has no right to daily exercise and veterinary care, but you do have the obligations to provide these things for him. Obligations may arise also from special relationships or kindnesses done. One might feel obliged to put their animal out of its misery in a view of terminal health condition. None of these obligations, and however, involve a claim of right.
To end up our debate today, here is the reply speech conclusion from Ms. Lea May Moalom.
Animals have their own right as do to humans, and we should respect that and give them the same respect that we give each other. Animals deserve to be given those same basic rights as humans. All humans are considered equal, and ethical principles and legal statutes should protect the rights of animals to live according to their own nature and remain free from exploitation. Animals should be given a right, not only humans but also animals. Because some animals are endangered, they should have a protection, and animals deserve to have the same right as humans, and therefore, we don't have the right to kill or harm them in any way. Animals surely deserve to live their lives free from suffering and exploitation. All animals have the ability to suffer in the same way and to the same degree that humans do. It is not not to say, of course, that there is anything wrong with admiring animals or enjoying their company, nor it is to deny that there are powerful moral reasons for wishing to preserve endangered species of animals, similar to but considerable more powerful than the reasons for preserving great works of art. But what it does mean is that those who are committed to any aspect of the animal rights movement are truly misguided.
The last, here is the reply speech conclusion from her side, Miss Portia May Manula.
The capacity for moral judgment that distinguishes humans from animals is not a task to be administered to human beings one by one. Persons who are unable, because of some disability, to perform the full moral functions natural to human beings are certainly not ejected from the moral community. Humans are of such a kind that may be the subjects of experiments only with their voluntary consent. The choices they make freely must be respected, and animals are of such a kind that it is impossible for them to give or withhold voluntary consent or to make a moral choice. What humans retain when disabled, animals have never had, and human beings can act immorally, but only they, never wolves or monkeys, can discern, by applying some moral rule to the facts of a case, that a given act ought or ought not to be performed, commonweal behavior among animals, and even when most intelligent and most endearing, does not approach autonomous morality in this sense. Therefore, opposition to the use of animals in research is based on arguments of two different kinds: those relying on the alleged rights of animals and those relying on the consequence for animals. Both arguments will fail, and we do have obligations to animals, but they have no rights against us on which research can infringe. In calculating the consequence of animal research, we must weigh all the long-term benefits of the results achieved to animals and to humans. And in fact, that the calculation, we must not assume that moral equality of all animate species.
Well, that's